I buried my husband at noon. By 3 o'clock, I was standing in my black mourning dress, gripping the hands of my 5-year-old twins, while my own mother shoved a crumpled $20 bill against my chest. She told me to get out of her country club VIP lounge because I was a widowed charity case. My parents refused to loan me the money to stop my home from being foreclosed on the very next morning. They watched me walk out into the freezing rain with nothing but the clothes on our backs. They thought they had broken me. They had no idea that 5 years later, they would sit in a crowded ballroom and watch me give away $99 million to the working-class heroes who actually saved us while their own toxic empire crumbled into absolute ruin. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to build your own table after your family denied you a seat. The heavy glass doors of the Atlanta Oak Ridge Country Club swung open, hitting me with a blast of warm vanilla-scented air that felt entirely foreign against my damp skin. My dress clung to me heavy with the afternoon drizzle and the sheer weight of exhaustion. In my left hand I held Malik. In my right, I held Miles. My 5-year-old boys were completely silent, their small faces stained with tears they did not fully understand yet. We had just watched a wooden casket lower their father Jamal into the Georgia clay exactly 3 hours ago. I did not belong in this place with its crystal chandeliers and imported marble floors. I never did. But desperation forces you to walk into rooms you would otherwise avoid. Jamal's sudden illness had been a rapid, merciless thief. The medical bills from his intensive care stay had drained our meager savings within weeks, bleeding our accounts dry. The bank had sent the final notice days ago. If I did not produce the past due amount by tomorrow morning, my boys and I would be locked out of the only home they had ever known. I spotted her immediately. My mother Valerie stood near the center of the VIP lounge. She wore an immaculate cream-colored pantsuit, a stark contrast to the grief I carried into her pristine environment. She was laughing softly, holding a flute of champagne, completely absorbed in a conversation with two men in expensive golf attire. I walked toward her, my cheap heels making a dull thud against the marble. The chatter in the room began to die down as other guests noticed us. A woman in mourning dragging two fatherless children into a Saturday afternoon mixer was not the aesthetic Oak Ridge aimed for. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse from crying earlier that day. Valerie turned. The smile dropped from her face the second she saw me. She did not reach out to hug me. She did not look at her grandsons who were clutching my legs seeking any kind of comfort. Instead, her eyes darted nervously to the investors standing beside her, calculating the social damage of my presence. "Kendra," she hissed, grabbing my elbow and pulling me away from the center of the room toward a quiet alcove near the kitchen doors. "What are you doing here? You are making a spectacle of yourself." "I need your help," I pleaded, swallowing every ounce of pride I had left. "The hospital bills took everything, Mom. The bank is foreclosing on our house tomorrow morning. I just need a temporary loan. I will pay back every single cent. Please, for Malik and Miles. They just lost their father today. They cannot lose their home tomorrow." Valerie looked at me, her expression hardening into something cold and familiar. She reached into her designer handbag. I felt a brief, desperate surge of hope. Maybe just this once the severity of the situation would break through her superficial shell. Maybe she would finally be a mother. Instead, she pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. She pressed it hard against my chest. "Take this for gas and leave," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "This lounge is for family and investors, Kendra. It is not for widowed charity cases. You are ruining the atmosphere." I stared at the green paper in her hand, the insult knocking the breath out of my lungs. "You are turning us away on the day Jamal died," I asked, the reality struggling to process in my exhausted brain. Before Valerie could respond, a heavy hand clamped down on my shoulder. I turned to see my father, Calvin. He wore his custom-tailored suit, smelling of expensive cigars and absolute authority. As the CEO of a major logistics firm, Calvin ran his family the same way he ran his business, with ruthless efficiency and zero tolerance for what he considered liabilities. I was his biggest liability. "Stop harassing your mother," Calvin said, stepping between us. His voice was loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. He looked down at Malik and Miles. Malik let out a small whimper, burying his face in my dress, terrified by the sheer coldness radiating from his grandfather. Calvin simply scoffed at the display of emotion. "We warned you, Kendra." He continued his words, cutting through the air like a knife. "We told you exactly what would happen when you dropped out of Spelman to marry that community organizer. You had a clear path to corporate law. You had a future that fit this family. But you chose to throw it away for a life of playing in the dirt with those rescue horses you and Jamal loved so much." I tightened my grip on my son's hands. Jamal spent his life helping people. I fired back, finding a spark of anger beneath the crushing grief. He built that equine therapy program from nothing. He gave back to the community. He was a good man. "A good man who left you bankrupt and begging for handouts at my country club," Calvin retorted without missing a beat. "You made your bed when you chose his world over ours. We are not financing your mistakes. You wanted to be independent so badly. Figure it out yourself." I was rewriting history as he always did. I had not dropped out of Spelman out of rebellion. I left because they threatened to cut my tuition the moment I refused to date the son of his biggest investor, choosing Jamal instead. They had systematically isolated me for years, punishing me for valuing purpose over prestige. And now they were using my husband's tragic death as an opportunity to mock the life we built. I looked at my mother. She had turned her back to me, signaling to a waiter for a refill on her champagne, completely indifferent to the fact that her daughter and grandsons were about to be homeless. I looked at my father, whose jaw was set in that familiar, unyielding line of absolute arrogance. I refused to give them the satisfaction of my tears. I let the $20 bill fall from my chest, watching it flutter onto the pristine marble floor. I did not say another word. I squeezed my boys' hands gently. "Come on, babies," I whispered. "We are leaving." I turned my back on the Atlanta Oak Ridge Country Club, walking out through those heavy glass doors and back into the unforgiving gray afternoon. The rain had picked up cold and biting, soaking through my thin black dress before we even reached my beat-up sedan in the far corner of the parking lot. I strapped the boys into their car seats, promising them everything would be all right, even though I had absolutely no idea how I was going to keep that promise. I slid into the driver's seat, wiping the rain and stray tears from my face. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing through impossible options. Who could I call? Where could we go? Suddenly, my phone chimed from inside my purse. I pulled it out, the screen illuminating the dark interior of the car. It was an automated message marked urgent from my mortgage lender. I opened the email, my eyes scanning the harsh corporate text. It was not a standard foreclosure notice. The message stated that my debt had not simply been processed for bank repossession. Instead, the deed and the outstanding mortgage had been bought out entirely by a private commercial developer. The new owner was executing an immediate order to vacate. My breath caught in my throat as I read the name of the private development firm listed at the bottom of the email. It was a name I recognized instantly. A name that belonged to the man who was currently sitting inside that country club, laughing and drinking with my parents. The nightmare was not just beginning, it was being orchestrated. I stare at the glaring screen of my phone. The automated bank email spells it out in sterile corporate text. My mortgage was not just transferred to a standard holding company. It was purchased directly by Vanguard Holdings. I know that name. I know the man who owns it. A sharp, mocking laugh cuts through the heavy air of the country club foyer. I look up from my screen. My older sister Chloe struts toward me, her designer heels clicking loudly against the polished marble floor. She is clinging to the arm of her husband, Todd. Todd is a wealthy white real estate developer who has made a highly lucrative career out of gentrifying neighborhoods, exactly like the one Jamal and I dedicated our lives to protecting. Chloe stops a few feet away, reaching up to adjust a massive diamond pendant resting against her collarbone. "Did you get the email, Aisha?" she asks, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "I told Todd to make sure the bank sent it before you left. We wanted to be completely transparent with you." Todd takes a slow sip of his bourbon. The ice clinks against the crystal glass, a sound that grates against my raw nerves. He looks down at me, then glances at Malik and Miles, who are clutching my black morning skirt. He does not offer a single word of condolence for the man we buried 3 hours ago. Instead, he smiles, a cold, predatory smile. I bought your debt, Aisha, Todd says smoothly. Your father and I had a long talk about your situation. We decided it was time you learned how the real world actually works. You have exactly 24 hours to vacate my new property. My lungs feel like they are filled with lead. I look from Todd to Chloe. You bought the debt on my house just to evict me. I ask, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and rising fury. Jamal is barely in the ground. My boys just lost their father. Chloe waves her hand dismissively. Jamal made his choices, Aisha. And so did you. You had a full ride to Spelman. You were supposed to go to law school. You were supposed to join Dad's firm as corporate counsel. Instead, you dropped out to chase some equine therapy nonsense with a man who thought organizing community protests paid the bills. Look where that got you. I push past Chloe, my eyes scanning the room until I spot my father, Calvin. He is still standing near the caviar station typing an email on his phone. I march over to him, pulling my boys along. Calvin, look at me, I demand. He slowly lowers his phone, clearly annoyed by the interruption. He looks at me with the exact same expression he reserves for incompetent warehouse managers at his logistics company. How could you fund my eviction on the day of my husband's funeral? I ask, keeping my voice steady, despite the rage boiling in my chest. You gave Todd the capital to buy my debt. You did this to your own daughter, to your own grandsons. Calvin does not blink. He slides his phone into his tailored suit pocket. Todd is a businessman, Aisha. He saw an underperforming asset and he acquired it. You are a liability. I warned you 10 years ago that I would not subsidize your foolish decisions. You wanted to build a life around rescue horses and troubled teenagers in South Atlanta. You wanted to play the savior. Well, the savior needs saving now, doesn't she? He turns back to his associates, dismissing me entirely. Leave the keys under the mat, Calvin says over his shoulder. I expect the property to be clean. The cruelty is so absolute, so entirely stripped of basic human decency, that it leaves no room for tears. I look at the people who share my blood. They are looking at me like I am a stain on their perfect, wealthy aesthetic. They expect me to break down. They expect me to drop to my knees and beg for a reprieve. I refuse to give them the satisfaction. I turn around, tightening my grip on my son's hands. We walk straight past Chloe and Todd. I do not look at them. I push open the heavy glass doors of the country club and step out into the freezing Georgia rain. The storm has intensified the sky, turning a bruised, violent purple. The cold wind bites through my thin black dress, but I barely feel it. My singular focus is getting my boys to safety. We rush across the flooded parking lot. I strap Malik and Miles into their car seats in the back of my beat-up sedan. Their faces are pale, their small bodies shivering in their little black suits. I promise them we are going home. I promise them they are safe. I turn the key in the ignition and the old engine sputters before roaring to life. The drive back to our neighborhood is a blur of slamming windshield wipers and blinding headlights. My mind races, trying to formulate a survival plan. 24 hours. I have 24 hours to pack 10 years of a life built with Jamal. I need to gather his clothes, the boys' toys are important documents. I need to figure out how to stretch the meager remaining balance in my checking account to cover a cheap motel for a few nights. I need to find a storage unit. I need to somehow hold my family together while my entire world collapses. I pull onto our street, the familiar oak trees offering a brief illusion of comfort. But as my headlights sweep across the front of our modest single-story house, the illusion shatters instantly. A massive white commercial moving truck is parked aggressively across my driveway. 3 men in dark raincoats are standing on my front porch. They are not waiting patiently. They are actively drilling into the front door. I slam the car into park, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. I tell the boys to stay put and lock the doors. I step out into the torrential rain, sprinting up the front walkway. Hey! I shout, my voice cutting through the sound of the storm. What are you doing? This is my house. I have 24 hours. One of the men turns around. He holds a heavy-duty power drill in one hand and a brand new brass deadbolt in the other. He looks me up and down, taking in my soaked morning dress and the desperation in my eyes. Not anymore, lady, he says callously. Management gave the order 30 minutes ago. The locks are already changed. You are officially trespassing. I stare at the shiny new metal hardware securing my front door. Todd did not give me 24 hours. He gave me exactly the amount of time it took to drive home. I stand frozen on the top step of my own porch while the freezing rain runs down my face. The lead security guard, a massive man in a yellow rain slicker, does not even look me in the eye as he tightens the final screw on the deadbolt. He wipes his hands on his pants and steps aside. Behind him, the front door swings open. Two other men emerge from my hallway. They are not carrying moving boxes. They are dragging heavy-duty black trash bags across the hardwood floors Jamal and I installed ourselves. The sound of the plastic scraping against the wood makes my stomach turn. One of the men heaves his bag over the porch railing. It lands with a sickening crunch on the saturated lawn. "That is my husband's property," I shout, stepping in front of the lead guard. "You cannot do this. We have legal rights. You have to give us a formal eviction notice period." The guard pulls a folded document from his waterproof pocket and shoves it toward me. Todd expedited an emergency writ of possession, claiming the property was abandoned and hazardous. The guard says, his voice devoid of any empathy. "The judge signed it an hour ago. You have no rights here anymore. Move your vehicle off the driveway, or I am calling the police and having you arrested for criminal trespassing." Arrested. The word hits me like a physical blow. I turn my head and look back at my beat-up sedan. Malik and Miles are pressing their small faces against the rain-streaked window, their eyes wide with terror. If I get arrested tonight, my boys will go into the system. Todd and Chloe would probably make sure of it. They would use my arrest as proof that I am an unfit mother. I cannot fight this battle on the front porch in the mud. I have to protect my sons first. I turn away from the men destroying my home. I walk down the steps, my shoes sinking deep into the ruined, muddy grass. I bend down and rip open the top of the black trash bag they just threw over the railing. Inside, jumbled together like garbage, are Jamal's framed community service awards, my nursing school textbooks I never got to finish, and the boys' favorite stuffed animals now soaked in dirty rainwater. I grab the stuffed animals, clutching them to my chest, and march back to my car. I throw myself into the driver's seat and slam the door, locking it instantly. I turn the key, cranking the broken heater to its highest setting. It blows lukewarm air, but it is better than the freezing downpour outside. I hand the damp toys back to the twins, trying to force a reassuring smile I absolutely do not feel. "We are going to have a sleepover adventure tonight," I tell them, my voice shaking. "I just need to make a quick phone call." I pull out my phone. My hands are trembling so violently I can barely unlock the screen. "I need a place for us to sleep tonight. Just one night out of the cold so I can figure out my next move tomorrow." I scroll through my contacts, skipping past family members, and stop on Sarah. Sarah was my college roommate at Spelman. We had drifted apart over the years as my life with Jamal took a different path from her corporate trajectory, but she always claimed I could call her for anything. I press dial. The phone rings 4 times before she picks up. "Aisha," Sarah says. Her voice is tight-guarded. "Sarah. I am so sorry to call you like this." I rush out, the words tumbling over each other. "Jamal's funeral was today, and my parents, they let Todd buy my house. We are locked out in the rain right now. The boys are freezing. Can we please just crash on your living room floor tonight?" There is a heavy, suffocating silence on the other end of the line. "Aisha, I saw Chloe's post." Sarah finally says, her tone dripping with uncomfortable pity. "Look, I know grief makes people do crazy things, but you cannot go around harassing your family for money and making up these wild stories about Todd evicting you." My brain stalls. "What post? What are you talking about?" "Chloe posted an update an hour ago." Sarah says, her voice growing colder. "She said you had a complete mental break at the country club today. She said you tried to extort Todd for $1 million and threatened to ruin his business if he did not pay up. She warned everyone that you might reach out asking for handouts to fund your delusions, and she asked us not to enable you so you would seek professional psychiatric help." The air leaves my lungs. Chloe did not just take my home. She took my entire support network. She weaponized her massive social media following, packed with Atlanta's elite, my former classmates and everyone I used to know, to preemptively brand me as a grieving, unstable extortionist. If I call anyone else in my contact list, I will get the exact same response. I am completely, utterly boxed in. "I cannot help you, Aisha," Sarah says. Please get the help you need. The line goes dead. I drop the phone onto my lap. I stare out the windshield at the security guards who are now shining high-powered flashlights directly at my car, gesturing for me to leave the driveway. I am utterly isolated. My wealthy parents threw me away. My sister orchestrated a smear campaign to ensure no one catches me when I fall. I have $20 to my name, a tank of gas, and 2 children who have not eaten since breakfast. Suddenly, a sound shatters the quiet interior of the car. Malik starts coughing. It is not a small clearing your throat kind of cough. It is a deep, wet, rattling sound that shakes his entire little body. He is shivering violently in his damp suit jacket. The cold has already settled deep into his chest. Panic, raw and absolute, overrides my pride. I cannot let my boys sleep in this freezing car. I cannot let them suffer because my family decided to play a cruel corporate game with our lives. I pick up my phone again. I open my contacts and dial the one number I swore I would never call unless it was a matter of life and death. When Jamal and I got married, he made me promise one thing. His parents, Isaiah and Brenda, were proud, hardworking people who lived paycheck to paycheck in a tiny, cramped house in South Atlanta. Jamal had spent his life trying to lift them out of poverty. He begged me never to burden them with our financial problems, knowing they would sacrifice their own meals just to give us a dime. I had honored that promise for 10 years. But Jamal is gone, and his sons are freezing. The phone rings twice before a voice answers. It is Brenda. Hello, she says softly, her voice thick with the same fresh grief I am carrying. Brenda, I sob, the dam finally breaking. I cannot stop the tears anymore. They are pouring down my face hot and fast. Brenda, it is Aisha. We are locked out. Todd took the house. They threw our things in the mud and the boys are so cold. Malik is coughing and I have nowhere to go. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I wait for her to ask questions. I wait for her to ask about Chloe's post, or why my millionaire father is not helping me. I wait for the hesitation. It never comes. Where are you, daughter? Brenda asks, her voice suddenly transforming from a grieving mother into steel. We are in the driveway, I whisper. The guards are telling us to move. Put your hazard lights on, Brenda commands. Do not move an inch. We are on our way. She hangs up. I reach forward and hit the hazard button. The orange lights blink steadily, casting an eerie glow over the heavy rain. We sit in the car for 30 agonizing minutes. The security guards walk off the porch and tap aggressively on my window, ordering me to vacate the private property. I refuse to roll down the window. I just point to the hazard lights, silently praying the police do not show up first. Then headlights cut through the dark, rainy street. It is not an Uber. It is not a police cruiser. It is not a sleek luxury SUV like the ones my parents drive. It is a rusted 10-year-old pickup truck. The engine whines loudly as it pulls aggressively into the driveway, blocking the security guard's path entirely. The truck jerks to a halt, the headlights blinding the men in raincoats. The doors of the truck fly open simultaneously. Isaiah and Brenda step out directly into the deep, freezing mud. They do not have umbrellas. They do not have expensive rain gear. But the look on their faces tells me exactly what they brought. They brought a war. Isaiah's heavy work boots hit the wet pavement with a solid thud. He walks straight up to the lead security guard, his broad shoulders squared. The guard raises a hand, opening his mouth to issue a warning, but Isaiah swats his arm away with the calloused hand of a man who spent 40 years walking miles in every weather condition imaginable. Do not touch me. Isaiah barks, his voice carrying a dangerous low rumble that demands instant obedience. And do not touch my son's things. Brenda does not even look at the guards. She marches straight to my car, pulling the back door open. The icy wind whips through the cabin, but she immediately blocks it with her own body. She strips off her thick wool winter coat, ignoring the freezing rain that instantly soaks her thin cotton blouse. She wraps the heavy coat around Malik and Miles, bundling them together and pulling them tight against her chest. Grandma is here, she whispers fiercely into their hair. Nobody is hurting my babies. I watch through the rain-streaked window as Isaiah drops to his knees in the ruined grass. He completely ignores the deep mud ruining his good slacks. He reaches into the torn plastic bags and carefully, reverently pulls out Jamal's framed community service awards. He wipes the mud off the broken glass with his own sleeve. He gathers up my nursing textbooks and the boys scattered toys, treating every damaged item like a priceless artifact. When the lead guard steps forward to intimidate him, Isaiah stands up to his full height, chest out, radiating absolute defiance. He dares the guard to say a single word. The man steps back, lowering his flashlight. Isaiah silently loads the salvaged bags into the bed of his rusted truck. We pile into the cramped cab. The truck's heater barely works, blowing a faint stream of tepid air, but the sheer physical warmth of being pressed together saves us. Brenda holds the twins on her lap, humming a soft church hymn to soothe their shivering. I look out the passenger window as we leave the affluent neighborhood behind, driving deeper into the working-class streets of South Atlanta. I think about my mother sipping champagne in her designer pantsuit. I think about my father writing off his grieving daughter as a financial liability. They live in a 10-bedroom mansion with 4 empty guest suites, yet they watched my children walk out into a storm. Isaiah and Brenda live in a small, fading 2-bedroom brick house that desperately needs a new roof and fresh paint. They survive on a retired postal worker's pension and a retired public school teacher's savings. Yet the moment we walk through their front door, the contrast is staggering. The house smells like cinnamon and clean linen. Brenda immediately marches me into the tiny bathroom, handing me thick, warm towels and a pair of her own oversized flannel pajamas. "You take our bed tonight, Aisha," she orders, brooking absolutely no argument. Isaiah and I are taking the pull-out couch in the living room. When I try to protest, arguing that they need their rest, she stops me with a look so fierce it steals my breath. "You are our daughter," she says, her voice breaking slightly. "This is your home now." The absolute certainty in her eyes shatters the last of my defenses. I cry for the second time that night, not from despair, but from the overwhelming realization of what true family actually means. It is not about bloodlines or trust funds. It is about who steps into the mud when you are drowning. I wake up the next morning disoriented, the heavy handmade quilts pulled up to my chin. It takes a fraction of a second for the memories of the funeral and the eviction to crash over me, threatening a fresh wave of panic. But before the anxiety can fully set in, another sensation grounds me. The rich, comforting smell of butter, maple syrup, and sizzling bacon fills the small house. I hear the television playing softly in the living room, accompanied by the miraculous, impossible sound of Malik and Miles giggling. I push myself out of bed and walk down the narrow hallway. Brenda is standing at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, her hips swaying slightly to a gospel tune playing from a small kitchen radio. The twins are sitting on the floor watching cartoons, their faces clean and their stomachs full. I look toward the kitchen table, expecting to see Isaiah drinking his morning coffee and reading the paper. Instead, the table is completely covered in a chaotic mountain of paperwork. Isaiah is wearing his reading glasses, hunched over stacks of printed documents, municipal zoning maps, and public property records. His coffee is sitting untouched and cold beside him. He has not slept a single wink. As a former postal worker who walked every street and neighborhood in this city for 4 decades, Isaiah knows exactly how the municipal machine operates. He knows how to track property lines, how to pull public records, and how to spot a lie hidden deep within bureaucratic paperwork. He hears my footsteps and looks up. His eyes are red-rimmed from exhaustion, but they are burning with a sharp, dangerous intensity. He takes his glasses off and motions for me to sit down across from him. "I spent the entire night digging into Todd's shell companies," Isaiah says, his voice rough. "I wanted to know how a real estate developer managed to expedite an emergency writ of possession so fast on a Saturday. I wanted to know why he targeted your specific street when there are dozens of other foreclosures in that district." I sit down, staring at the confusing spread of papers. "Chloe said it was to teach me a lesson," I reply, my voice tight with lingering anger. "My father said it was just a routine business acquisition to clear out a liability." Isaiah shakes his head slowly, a grim, humorless smile touching the corners of his mouth. He pulls a thick, heavily redacted corporate document from the center of the pile and slides it across the worn Formica table. He taps his thick index finger against a highlighted paragraph buried deep in the legal jargon. "Your father and your brother-in-law are liars, Aisha," Isaiah says, looking me dead in the eye. "Todd did not buy your debt just to be cruel. He did not orchestrate a same-day eviction to teach you a lesson about the real world." Isaiah taps the paper again, harder this time. I bought your house because the city council just quietly approved a massive multi-million-dollar infrastructure bill. They are building a new commercial highway to connect the northern suburbs to the industrial district, and the main off-ramp is planned to go right through your old living room. I stare at the heavily redacted municipal documents spread across Brenda and Isaiah's tiny kitchen table. My eyes trace the highlighted lines detailing the new commercial highway project. The blueprints show the massive concrete off-ramp cutting directly through the living room where Jamal and I used to watch movies. Todd did not buy my foreclosed mortgage because he wanted to punish me for being poor. He bought it because he had inside information from the city council. The government was preparing to buy out our entire street under eminent domain for millions of dollars. Todd swooped in, used my husband's sudden death to trigger an immediate default, and stole the property for pennies so he could collect the massive government payout. And my father Calvin had funded the entire transaction. My own father had handed his son-in-law the capital to legally steal my home while I was picking out a casket. The sheer calculated evil of it makes my vision swim. I traced the signature of Todd's shell company at the bottom of the deed transfer. My first instinct is to fight. I want to march into the courthouse, expose the insider trading, and drag Todd and my father in front of a judge. But Isaiah gently places his calloused hand over mine, shaking his head. He knows exactly what I am thinking. He reminds me that Calvin has a team of ruthless corporate lawyers on retainer, and Todd plays golf with half the judges in Fulton County. If I try to sue them right now, a penniless grieving widow with a recent foreclosure on her record, they will crush me. They will bury me in endless legal fees, drain my sanity, and probably try to take custody of Malik and Miles, just to break my spirit entirely. I have to let the house go. I have to swallow the bile in my throat and walk away. But I refuse to stay a victim. I wipe my face, pushing the anger down deep into my chest where it can fuel me instead of destroy me. I look at Isaiah and Brenda, the two people who opened their doors to me when my own blood locked me out in the rain. I tell them I am done with my biological family. I am severing the tie completely. But I am not going to just survive. I am going to build the exact empire Jamal and I spent our late nights dreaming about. I reach into my bag and pull out my laptop, powering it on. I pull up a commercial real estate listing that Jamal and I had bookmarked months ago. It is a massive foreclosed plot of land in the valley, sitting miles outside the city limits. Right now, it is nothing but barren dirt, overgrown weeds, and a collapsing barn. To any traditional developer, it is a wasteland. But to me, it is a blank canvas. It is the perfect location for Jamal's Haven, a premier equine youth therapy ranch. It has enough acreage for pastures, riding rings, and counseling centers for traumatized kids. It is exactly what my husband wanted to build before his heart stopped. I turn the screen around so Isaiah and Brenda can see the sprawling acres of neglected Georgia dirt. I explain the vision. I tell them how I can secure state contracts for youth therapy programs once the facility is up and running. But then I tell them the reality. The bank holds the deed to that dirt, and they consider me the ultimate financial risk. I am a newly widowed, unemployed, foreclosed upon single mother. Traditional commercial lenders practically laughed me out of their offices on the phone this morning. The only way the bank will release that land to me is if I can produce a massive, completely unreasonable cash down payment by the end of the week. I close the laptop sharply. I tell my in-laws that I am not giving up. If the banks will not help me, I will find someone who will. I start listing off the desperate measures I am willing to take. I will apply for predatory high-interest loans. I will go to shadow lenders. I will leverage whatever future earnings I have, sign away my life, and take on crippling debt just to secure that plot of dirt. I pace the small kitchen, my voice rising with frantic determination, declaring that I do not care how dangerous the financial terms are. I will do it for Jamal. Brenda stands up from the stove. She walks over to the table and physically places her hands over my laptop, forcing me to stop pacing. She looks at me with a calm, unwavering authority that immediately silences my frantic rambling. She tells me I am not going to any predatory lenders. I am not going to sign my life away to loan sharks who will prey on my grief. Isaiah stands up from his chair. He walks slowly down the narrow hallway toward their bedroom. I hear the sound of a closet door opening, followed by the heavy clank of a metal lockbox. When Isaiah returns to the kitchen, he is holding a small, weathered leather folder. He walks back to his seat, opens the folder, and pulls out a single rectangular slip of paper. He slides it across the worn formica table until it rests directly in front of me. I look down. It is a certified cashier's check, the name left blank for me to fill in. But it is the number written on the right side that makes my lungs seize. It is an astronomical sum. It is enough to cover the massive down payment on the Valley land, with enough left over to buy our first rescue horses and secure the initial building permits. I look up at Isaiah and Brenda, my mind unable to comprehend what I am seeing. "Where did you get this?" I ask, my voice barely a whisper. Brenda reaches out and takes my hand. She tells me it is everything. It is Isaiah's entire postal worker pension. It is every single dime of her retired public school teacher savings. It is the life insurance policy they cashed out early. It is the emergency fund they spent 40 years building, working double shifts, clipping coupons, and denying themselves vacations just to feel secure. They have liquidated their entire existence, their safety net, their absolute future, and placed it on the kitchen table in front of me. I violently push the check back across the table. I shake my head, hot tears instantly spilling over my cheeks. "No," I cry, my voice breaking. "I cannot take this. Brenda, Isaiah, this is your retirement. This is your survival. If this ranch fails, if I fail, you will have absolutely nothing left. I cannot take your future. I will not do it." Isaiah slides the check right back to me. He does not break eye contact. He does not flinch. His face is set with the kind of fierce, unshakable conviction that moves mountains. He leans over the table, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the municipal blueprints of the highway that ruined us. "Jamal believed in you," Isaiah says, his voice a low, powerful rumble that fills the tiny kitchen. "And we believe in you, Aisha. You are our daughter. Your boys are our blood. You think we care about a savings account when our family needs a foundation. We are giving you this money so you can build his dream, so you can show the people who threw you away exactly what you are made of. Take it." I sob openly, my hands hovering over the slip of paper. The sheer magnitude of their sacrifice is completely overwhelming. My millionaire parents watched my children shiver in the rain to protect their wealth. These working-class heroes are willingly giving up every penny they possess just to give me a fighting chance. I pick up the check. My fingers are trembling so hard the paper rattles. I promise them I will not fail. I promise them I will build Jamal's haven, and I will take care of them for the rest of their lives. Isaiah nods, satisfied, but his expression hardens, turning deadly serious. He taps the table, commanding my absolute attention. "Build the dream, Aisha," Isaiah says, locking his eyes onto mine. "But you listen to me very carefully. Your father and your brother-in-law are corporate predators. They hunt for sport. If they find out you bought that land, if they see your name on the deed, they will find a way to bleed you dry or steal it out from under you again. You cannot buy this land as Aisha. You take this check, you go to a lawyer, and you put every single inch of that property under a blind, anonymous, limited liability company. You bury your identity so deep in corporate shell accounts that your family never ever finds out you exist until it is too late for them to stop you." I do exactly as Isaiah instructs. The very next morning, I walk into the fluorescent-lit office of a corporate attorney in downtown Atlanta and legally cease to exist. I sign the paperwork to create Jamal's Haven LLC, establishing a complex corporate structure with a registered agent in Delaware. My name appears nowhere on the public registry. On paper, the massive foreclosed plot of land in the valley is purchased by a faceless, nameless corporate entity. I bury my identity so deep beneath layers of legal protection that not even a highly paid private investigator could trace the dirt road of this ranch back to me. 5 years is a lifetime when you measure it in sweat calluses and pre-dawn alarms. My alarm rings at 4 every single morning. The valley is pitch black and freezing when I step out of the modest modular home I initially placed on the property. The wind whips down from the foothills, biting through my thick canvas jacket. As I walk toward the collapsing barn, we slowly rebuild board by board. There is no glamour in this life. There is only grit, dirt, and relentless, agonizing physical labor. I spend my mornings mucking out stalls, shoveling heavy wet manure into wheelbarrows until the muscles in my lower back scream in protest. My hands, once perfectly manicured for country club dinners, become rough, cracked, and permanently stained with earth and iodine. Isaiah is right beside me every morning. The retired postal worker trades his uniform for denim overalls, hammering nails, repairing fences, and fixing broken water lines in the freezing rain. Brenda takes over the logistics, managing the accounting ordering feed, and ensuring Malik and Miles are fed, educated, and loved while I work myself to the bone. Our first arrivals are rescue horses. They come to us battered, starved, and terrified of human contact. They are broken creatures discarded by people who deemed them useless. I look into their panicked wide eyes and see my own reflection. We heal each other in the quiet hours of the morning. I sit in the dirt of the round pen for hours, letting them slowly learn to trust my presence, teaching them that they are safe in this valley. Then come the children. Word spreads through the county about the new equine facility in the valley. We start taking in youth from the foster care system, teenagers who have been bounced from home to home. Kids who have suffered the kind of profound trauma that traditional talk therapy cannot touch. I watch angry, defensive teenagers walk into our pastures with their fists clenched and their jaws tight. I watch those same teenagers press their faces into the necks of our rescue horses and sob until their knees give out. There is a profound unspoken language between a broken child and a broken horse. They recognize the survival instinct in each other. I take the meticulously recorded data of these breakthroughs to the state capitol. I sit across from a panel of skeptical government health officials in a sterile boardroom. They see an unknown LLC represented by a woman with dirt under her fingernails. I do not give them a chance to dismiss me. I hand them binders of empirical data, psychological evaluations, and operational metrics, proving that Jamal's Haven is reducing recidivism rates and improving mental health outcomes faster than any facility in the state. I walk out of that boardroom with a multi-million-dollar 5-year state contract. The funding changes everything, but I maintain the absolute secrecy of Jamal's Haven LLC. The money allows us to hire specialized trauma therapists, expand our pastures, and build a state-of-the-art riding arena. But I actively block every minor attempt my biological family makes to locate me. I change my phone number. I close my old bank accounts. I set up secure post office boxes for any unavoidable personal mail. Occasionally, news from my old life filters through the cracks. Sarah, my former college roommate, attempts to reach out through an old email address I use exclusively for junk mail. She forwards me a digital link to an article from Atlanta Luxury Living magazine. The cover features Chloe and Todd standing in front of a sprawling 20,000 square foot mega mansion. The headline praises Todd as a visionary real estate developer who recently closed a massive government infrastructure buyout. I stare at the glossy photo of my sister draped in diamonds standing on a fortune built directly over the wreckage of my old living room. The article details their lavish lifestyle, their fleet of imported cars, and their upcoming vacation to the Maldives. The grapevine whispers that Chloe frequently tells her high society friends that I had a mental breakdown, lost custody of my children, and am likely living in a trailer park somewhere too ashamed to show my face. They are completely blissfully unaware that the homeless sister they threw out into the rain is now generating massive state contracts and commanding one of the most successful private therapy programs in the region. I delete the email without a second thought. I do not need their validation. I have my sanctuary. Today, Jamal's Haven is a thriving, impenetrable fortress. The barren dirt has been transformed into lush, rolling green pastures lined with pristine white fencing. We have 20 healthy, rehabilitated horses grazing in the morning sun. Malik and Miles are 10 years old now. They are strong, confident, and deeply kind boys. They do not remember the freezing car or the black trash bags in the mud. They know only the open sky, the smell of alfalfa, and the unconditional love of their grandparents. I used the profits from our first major state contract to build Isaiah and Brenda a beautiful custom cedar guest house on the highest ridge of the property. It has a wraparound porch where Brenda sits in the evenings sipping sweet tea and watching the sunset, paint the valley in shades of gold and purple. Isaiah spends his afternoons teaching the twins how to change the oil on the John Deere tractor, his laughter echoing across the fields. We are safe, we are prosperous, we are untouchable, or so I thought. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon. The valley is perfectly still, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of horses chewing hay. I am walking toward the main office with a clipboard of feed inventory, when a high-pitched mechanical whine shatters the silence. I stop in my tracks, shielding my eyes against the bright sun. Hovering 50 feet above the main riding arena is a sleek black commercial-grade drone. Its camera lens is swiveling meticulously, recording the layout of the property, the new barns and the sprawling pastures. It hovers for 10 agonizing seconds, violating the absolute privacy of my sanctuary, before banking sharply and speeding off toward the access road. A cold, heavy knot forms in the pit of my stomach. Developers do not fly commercial drones over private agricultural land unless they are mapping it. I do not sleep that night. I sit at my kitchen table watching the access road until the sun comes up. The next morning, the mail carrier drives his truck all the way up to the main office instead of leaving the delivery at the highway mailbox. He hands me a thick, heavy envelope requiring a certified signature. The return address belongs to the City Zoning and Planning Commission. My hands are completely numb as I carry the envelope to my desk. I slide a letter opener through the thick paper. Inside is a formal, legally binding notification of a municipal land reassessment. I read the dense legal jargon, my eyes scanning past the zoning codes and bureaucratic phrasing until I reach the core of the document. A massive corporate development conglomerate has petitioned the city to seize the entire valley through the laws of eminent domain. They are claiming the land is necessary for a multi-use commercial reservoir and recreational complex that serves the greater public interest. The city has already fast-tracked the preliminary approval. They are coming for the land. They are coming for Jamal's Haven. I flip to the final page of the petition, looking for the name of the corporate entity leading the hostile takeover. I scan the bottom of the document, searching for the primary applicant. The breath is violently knocked from my lungs. The clipboard clatters to the hardwood floor. At the bottom of the page, signed with an arrogant, sweeping flourish in thick black ink, is the signature of the lead developer, Todd. I stare at the arrogant, sweeping signature at the bottom of the eminent domain petition. Todd, the man who threw my children into the freezing rain 5 years ago, is now trying to bulldoze the sanctuary I built from the mud up. The initial shock recedes, rapidly replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I reach for my laptop and begin digging deep into public financial records and corporate filings. It does not take long to find the bleeding wound in his supposedly perfect empire. Todd's development company is quietly drowning in debt. He over-leveraged his assets on a series of luxury condominiums right before the housing market shifted. He desperately needs this massive state contract for a new tech corridor to avoid complete bankruptcy. My valley is the geographical linchpin of his entire proposal. Without this specific acreage, his tech corridor falls apart, and his creditors will absolutely devour him. He has no idea he is up against me. Thanks to Isaiah's advice, Jamal's Haven is shielded behind ironclad layers of anonymous corporate structuring. To Todd, I am just a faceless corporate roadblock holding up his financial salvation. When the eminent domain claim stalls in the preliminary legal phases, Todd decides to play dirty. If he cannot buy the land cheaply, through a forced government buyout, he will regulate me out of existence. The targeted harassment begins just 3 days later. A white, unmarked county vehicle kicks up a cloud of dust on my access road. 2 men in crisp, button-down shirts step out, flashing badges from the Department of Health and Agricultural Safety. They do not ask for a tour or speak to the staff. They march straight toward the main pastures. I watch from the office window as they point at our rehabilitated rescue horses, scribbling furiously on their clipboards. An hour later, they hand Brenda a thick stack of official citations. They cite us for hazardous biological waste, inadequate shelter spacing, and unsafe livestock conditions. It is a complete fabrication. Our facilities exceed every state and federal standard. The stalls are immaculate, the veterinary care is top tier, and our water filtration system is brand new. But Todd is not stopping there. By the end of the week, Isaiah returns from town and slams the local newspaper down on the kitchen counter. Todd has filed a formal petition with the City Planning Board, attempting to rezone our therapeutic ranch as a commercial nuisance. His legal filing claims our daily operations threaten the local watershed and present a public health hazard to the surrounding county. He is trying to force the city to shut us down permanently. I do not panic. I do not call my sister or beg my father for mercy. I fight back. I drive into downtown Atlanta and walk into the offices of a boutique legal firm known for viciously dismantling corporate bullies. I sit in their glass-walled conference room and slide a massive retainer check across the mahogany table. I instruct my lead attorney, a razor-sharp woman named Evelyn, that under no circumstances is my true identity to be revealed. We will fight this entirely behind the shield of the LLC. We will use his own arrogant assumptions against him. Evelyn immediately files aggressive injunctions against the health citations, but we both know we need more than legal paperwork. We need undeniable proof of corruption. I purchase high-definition motion-activated surveillance cameras and spend the entire weekend secretly wiring them into the rafters of the main barn, the feed room, and the perimeter fences. I position them perfectly, hiding the lenses behind wooden beams and stable equipment. I do not have to wait long for the trap to spring. The following Tuesday, the exact same two health inspectors return for a surprise follow-up visit. This time, they corner Isaiah in the feed room, assuming the retired postal worker is just an uneducated farmhand. I sit in my office watching the live feed on my monitor, holding my breath. The lead inspector leans against a stack of alfalfa. He tells Isaiah that the nuisance citations and the watershed investigation can disappear permanently if the anonymous property owners agree to sell the land to a specific developer at a severely reduced rate. The implication is crystal clear. Then the absolute unthinkable happens. A man in a tailored suit walks into the frame of the hidden camera. I recognize him immediately as one of Todd's junior vice presidents. The executive hands the lead health inspector a thick white envelope. The inspector pockets the cash right in front of the round pen, laughing as he promises the executive that the ranch will be condemned by the end of the month. They handed me the exact weapon I needed. I download the pristine audio and the high-definition video directly to a secure encrypted drive. I do not send it to Todd. I do not send it to the local police precinct, knowing Todd's political influence might bury the evidence in a basement filing cabinet. I send the raw, unedited footage simultaneously to every single member of the City Council, the State Ethics Board, and 3 investigative journalists at the leading Atlanta news stations. I send it from a completely untraceable email address. The fallout is instantaneous and absolutely explosive. The local news stations interrupt their evening broadcasts to air the footage of the bribe. The City Council is forced to hold a special emergency session the very next morning to address the massive public outcry. With reporters swarming the municipal chamber, the council members publicly and unanimously deny Todd's rezoning petition. They distance themselves entirely from his tainted tech corridor proposal, launching an immediate internal investigation into the health department. Todd is publicly humiliated. The news coverage paints his firm as deeply corrupt, and his major investors begin to pull their funding in a panic. But a cornered animal is always the most dangerous kind. Todd realizes his entire empire is crumbling, and he lashes out with everything he has left. The celebration at the ranch is cut violently short the following afternoon. I am standing by the main gate watching Malik and Miles brush down a chestnut mare when a black sedan pulls sharply onto the gravel driveway. A man in a gray suit steps out. He does not look at the horses or the boys. He walks straight up to me and shoves a thick, heavy stack of legally bound papers into my chest. "You have been served," he says flatly, turning around and getting back into the car. I look down at the cover sheet. My blood runs cold. Todd has retaliated by filing a $20 million lawsuit against Jamal's Haven LLC. He is suing my anonymous company for tortious interference, corporate defamation, and illegal surveillance. He does not know who owns the LLC, but he knows exactly how to use the American legal system as a weapon of mass destruction. He knows that fighting a $20 million lawsuit will require an army of defense attorneys. He intends to bleed my anonymous company completely dry in legal fees, dragging the case out for years in court until I am entirely bankrupt and forced to surrender the land to cover the debt. He is going to force me into the open. The lawsuit is a financial parasite. Evelyn, my lead attorney, is a brilliant tactician, but her brilliance comes at an exorbitant hourly rate. Within a month, the legal retainers and court filing fees begin to devour the operational funds of Jamal's haven. The state contract money, which should be paying for specialized trauma therapists, and winter feed is being redirected to a vicious courtroom battle. I am forced to make agonizing choices. I cut my own salary to zero. I cancel the lumber order for the new indoor arena. We start rationing the high-protein supplements for the rescue horses, mixing it with standard forage, just to stretch the supply. The physical and emotional toll is immediate. I walk through the barn late one evening, turning off the overhead lights, and find Isaiah sweeping the main aisle. His movements are slower than usual, his broad shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He leans the push broom against the stall door and gestures for me to sit on a nearby hay bale. He looks at the dark circles under my eyes and the nervous tremor in my hands. Aisha, he says, his voice thick with a heavy, reluctant sorrow. We did what we set out to do. We built this place. We proved them all wrong. But this lawsuit is a meat grinder. Todd has infinite resources, and he is going to drag this out until we cannot afford to feed these animals or care for these children. We can sell the LLC, take the profit, and build Jamal's haven somewhere else. Somewhere safe. I look at the retired postal worker who liquidated his entire life savings to give me a chance. I see the fear in his eyes, the terror of losing everything all over again. But a cold, unyielding fire burns in my chest. I reach out and grip his calloused hand. I tell him that running away is exactly what Todd expects. Todd preys on the vulnerable because he assumes they will break under pressure. I refuse to break. I refuse to let that man steal my home a second time. I leave the barn and march straight into my office. I lock the door and power on my computer. Evelyn is fighting the legal war, but I need to fight the structural war. Todd is a predator, but predators have patterns, and they always leave a trail. I pull up the public municipal database and request the complete unredacted blueprints for Todd's proposed tech corridor. I spend 3 sleepless nights cross-referencing thousands of pages of zoning permits, environmental impact studies, and investor prospectuses. I drink endless cups of black coffee, my eyes burning as I scour the dense corporate filings. Todd is pitching a multi-billion-dollar green tech hub, promising prospective tech giants a facility powered entirely by sustainable energy. But the math in his operational budget does not make sense. He is projecting energy costs that are impossibly low. I dig deeper. Pulling up the state geological surveys of the valley from the Department of Natural Resources. I overlay the geological maps onto Todd's property acquisitions. Suddenly, the entire puzzle snaps together. The valley is not just flat, cheap dirt. It sits directly above a massive untapped geothermal grid. Todd's entire tech corridor proposal hinges on accessing that specific subterranean energy source to secure massive state green energy subsidies. Without those subsidies, his heavily leveraged company will instantly collapse. He has borrowed tens of millions of dollars from ruthless private equity firms, promising them a return based on state grants he has not yet secured. He is bleeding cash. His company is weeks away from catastrophic bankruptcy. He does not just want my land. He absolutely needs the specific geographical coordinates of Jamal's haven to access the geothermal core and save his empire. Hai is not a titan. Hai is a desperate man standing on a house of cards. I call Evelyn at 4 in the morning. I do not care that she is sleeping. When she answers groggy and irritated, I tell her we are shifting our strategy from defense to absolute offense. I instruct her to immediately form 3 new, untraceable shell companies in Wyoming, Nevada, and Delaware. I liquidate the remaining fragments of my personal emergency fund. I take out a high-interest predatory commercial loan against the actual physical assets of the LLC, the very thing Brenda warned me against years ago. I put absolutely everything on the line. I use those new faceless shell companies to quietly and aggressively purchase the commercial water and riparian rights to the river system that snakes through the foothills and directly borders Todd's remaining development parcels. It is a masterstroke of corporate strangulation. Todd needs massive amounts of water to create the cooling reservoirs for his proposed tech data centers. By securing those water rights through anonymous entities, I effectively landlock his entire project. I cut off his air supply. He cannot build his cooling towers. He cannot secure his environmental permits. He cannot access the geothermal grid. Todd is suddenly fighting a ghost. He cannot see a phantom that anticipates his every move and blocks him with brutal efficiency. The shadow war escalates rapidly over the next 2 weeks. I sit in my office and watch the chaos unfold through industry trade publications and municipal tracking software. Todd fires his lead legal team and hires a new aggressive firm from out of state. He files frantic emergency injunctions against my shell companies, demanding the courts force the anonymous owners to negotiate. Evelyn counters every single filing with a blizzard of procedural delays, burying his new lawyers in millions of pages of discovery requests. I watch Todd's corporate credit rating plummet in real time. His private equity investors begin publicly threatening to call in their loans. The local newspapers report that contractors on his other job sites are walking off the job due to unpaid invoices. The predator is suffocating, thrashing wildly as the invisible snare tightens around his neck. The climax of his desperation arrives on a humid Thursday afternoon. I am sitting in the tack room cleaning a leather saddle when my phone buzzes with a breaking news alert. I open the local news application and watch the live broadcast. Todd is standing on the marble steps of City Hall. He is flanked by a handful of nervous-looking local politicians and his new defense attorneys. He looks terrible. His usually perfectly tailored suit hangs loosely on his frame. His face is flushed, his skin slick with nervous sweat, and the arrogance that defined him is completely gone, replaced by a frantic, wide-eyed panic. He grips the edges of the podium and glares into the news cameras. He announces that his visionary tech corridor, a project designed to bring thousands of jobs and millions in revenue to the county, is being systematically destroyed. He plays the ultimate victim. He rants about a malicious anonymous corporate bully utilizing dark money and shadow companies to hoard water rights and manipulate the legal system. He demands that the state intervene and unmask the faceless entity that is sabotaging local progress. He literally begs the city council to bypass the standard eminent domain laws and seize the water rights for the public good. I watch the man who stole my home, the man who plotted with my father to leave me penniless in the rain, publicly unraveling. He is begging for mercy from the very system he used to crush me. The irony is exquisite. As I watch the broadcast, a sharp chime echoes in the quiet tack room. I minimize the video feed. A new email has arrived in the secure inbox designated for Jamal's Haven LLC. The sender address makes my heart skip a beat. It is not from a vendor, and it is not from Evelyn. The email is dispatched directly from the office of the state governor. The subject line reads, "Urgent inquiry regarding Valley infrastructure and state subsidies." I open the encrypted message, my eyes scanning the official state letterhead. The governor's chief of staff is requesting an immediate private meeting with the principal owner of Jamal's Haven LLC to discuss a sweeping legislative proposal that will permanently determine the fate of the valley. I stare at the glowing screen of my laptop, the subject line of the email burning itself into my retinas, the office of the governor. The highest executive authority in the state has bypassed the municipal zoning boards, bypassed the furious local politicians, and reached directly into the shadows to pull me out. I do not reply immediately. I close the laptop, walk out onto the porch of my modular home, and breathe in the cool night air of the valley. For 5 years I have hidden in the dirt. I have worn denim and canvas, shielding myself behind the anonymity of corporate filings and the quiet, grueling labor of rehabilitation. But tomorrow I cannot be the grieving widow running a horse rescue. Tomorrow I have to be the apex predator my father raised me to be right before he threw me to the wolves. I call Evelyn, my lead attorney, and tell her to arrange the meeting for the following afternoon. Then I drive into Atlanta. I walk into a high-end boutique and purchase a tailored charcoal gray suit that fits like a suit of armor. I pull my hair back into a severe, unyielding style. When I look in the mirror, I do not see the broken woman who cried on Isaiah's kitchen table. I see a corporate executioner. The state capitol building is a fortress of marble and polished mahogany. Evelyn walks beside me, her briefcase filled with our leverage. We are escorted past security, bypassing the crowded waiting rooms, and led directly into a massive soundproof boardroom deep within the executive wing. Seated at the long table is the governor's chief of staff, a stern man with sharp eyes. Beside him sit three executives in bespoke suits. I recognize their corporate logo immediately. They are the senior acquisitions team for Apex Dynamics, the largest tech conglomerate on the eastern seaboard. These are the billionaires Todd has been desperately trying to court. They are the actual money behind the proposed tech corridor. The chief of staff stands and gestures for us to sit. He does not know my face, only the name of my holding company. He begins the meeting with practiced diplomacy, but I hold up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I tell him we are not here to exchange pleasantries. I tell him I know exactly why Apex Dynamics is sitting in this room instead of standing on the steps of City Hall with Todd. The lead executive from Apex leans forward, dropping the diplomatic facade. He looks at me with a mixture of frustration and deep, begrudging respect. He admits that Todd is a dead man walking. Todd sold them a vision of a fully sustainable billion-dollar tech hub powered entirely by the valley's underground geothermal grid. Apex Dynamics committed massive capital based on the assumption that Todd owned the necessary access points and the vital water rights required for their cooling towers. But Todd overplayed his hand. He lied to his investors. He assumed he could easily bully a small therapeutic ranch into foreclosure using eminent domain. He never anticipated that the anonymous ranch owner would proactively weaponize shell companies to buy up every single drop of commercial water rights in the surrounding county. The executive slides a thick, glossy prospectus across the mahogany table. He tells me that Todd is financially toxic. His development firm is weeks away from catastrophic bankruptcy, and Apex Dynamics is officially severing all ties with him. They do not want to seize my land through municipal warfare. They want to cut out the middleman entirely. They want to buy the valley, the geothermal access, and the water rights directly from Jamal's Haven LLC. I open the folder. The initial offer printed on the first page is staggering. It is enough money to secure my family for generations. But I close the folder and slide it back across the table. I look the lead executive dead in the eye. I tell him his offer is insulting. I remind him that without my specific geographical coordinates and the water rights I currently hold in a corporate stranglehold, his multi-billion-dollar tech corridor is nothing but a fantasy. I tell him that I am not just selling dirt. I am selling the sole key to their entire corporate expansion. Furthermore, I explain that Jamal's Haven is not just a piece of real estate. It is a highly successful state-funded therapeutic facility. I will not displace my rescue horses or the traumatized children who rely on our programs simply to line their pockets. I lay out my terms with absolute unwavering precision. I demand a complete state-funded relocation of my ranch to a protected 200-acre parcel of pristine land bordering the national forest. I demand that Apex Dynamics cover the entire cost of constructing new state-of-the-art Barnes therapy centers and residential housing for my staff. And for the geothermal grid and the water rights, I demand $99 million in liquid capital. The boardroom goes completely silent. The three tech executives stare at me, their faces pale. The chief of staff shifts uncomfortably in his leather chair. One of the executives starts to protest, claiming the number is completely unfeasible, an astronomical sum that defies standard market valuation. I stand up from the table. I button my suit jacket and look down at them. I tell them they have exactly 60 seconds to agree to my terms, or I will walk out of this room, sell the water rights to their largest competitor, and watch their entire green energy initiative burn to the ground alongside Todd's failing company. The silence in the room is suffocating. 10 seconds pass. 20 seconds. Evelyn sits beside me, her face a mask of absolute stoicism, though I know her heart must be pounding as hard as mine. At the 45-second mark, the lead executive exhales a long, defeated breath. He reaches into his jacket, pulls out a gold fountain pen, and nods. We have a deal. I sit back down. Evelyn immediately pulls the preliminary contracts from her briefcase to lock in the terms before they can catch their breath. But as the chief of staff reviews the paperwork, he clears his throat, his expression turning deadly serious. He looks directly at me and explains the final catch. Because this transaction involves massive state subsidies and the transfer of municipal water rights, it cannot remain completely anonymous. State sunshine laws require absolute transparency for government-backed corporate acquisitions of this magnitude. He slides a disclosure agreement across the table. He tells me that to finalize the $99 million transfer, I must sign a public declaration of ownership. A mandatory 30-day public disclosure period will commence immediately. The protective veil of Jamal's Haven LLC will be legally pierced. My true identity, my full legal name will be published in the state registry and printed in the public notices of every major newspaper in the county. My father will see it. Chloe will see it. Todd, sitting in the ashes of his ruined empire, will see exactly who engineered his destruction. Evelyn puts a hand on my arm, silently asking if I am prepared for the fallout. For 5 years, anonymity has been my greatest weapon and my safest shield. Unsealing my name means declaring all-out war on a family of ruthless corporate predators who thought they had buried me. I look at the disclosure agreement. I think of the freezing rain. I think of Todd laughing as he handed me the foreclosure notice. I think of my father funding my destruction. I take the gold fountain pen from the executive. I am no longer the terrified widow they threw away. I have $99 million, an impenetrable legal team, and a heart forged in absolute fire. Let them see me. Let them realize exactly who brought them to their knees. I sign my full legal name on the dotted line. The meeting concludes with stiff handshakes. I walk out of the state capitol building, the warm afternoon sun hitting my face. The adrenaline is pumping through my veins like electricity. I did it. I saved the ranch, secured an astronomical fortune, and completely dismantled the man who tried to destroy my children. I reach the parking garage and unlock my car. The quiet hum of the engine is the only sound as I sit behind the steering wheel, letting the sheer magnitude of the victory wash over me. Then the silence is shattered. From deep inside my leather tote bag, a phone begins to vibrate. It is not my sleek corporate smartphone. It is my personal prepaid emergency cell phone. It is a number I established 5 years ago, an off-the-grid line known only to Isaiah, Brenda, and the principal at Malik and Miles School. I have never given this number to anyone else. I dig into my bag and pull out the ringing device. I look down at the glowing screen, expecting to see Brenda calling about a feed delivery or a question about the boys. The breath completely leaves my body. The blood turns to ice in my veins. Flashing brightly on the caller ID, calling a completely untraceable number just 10 minutes after I signed a public disclosure document that has not even been processed yet, is a name from my past. Valerie, my mother. My thumb hovers over the glowing green accept button on the screen. My heart hammers a fierce, steady rhythm against my ribs. 5 years of absolute silence have passed between us. 5 years of building an empire from the actual mud they left me in. I clear my throat, swallowing down the rushing adrenaline of the $99 million deal sitting in my tote bag. I bury the corporate executioner beneath a practiced layer of calm. I answer the phone. Silence stretches for a fraction of a second before her voice fills the narrow space of my car. It is the exact same tone she always used when entertaining Calvin's wealthy investors. Sugary, bright, and utterly devoid of genuine warmth. Aisha, darling. The sound of my mother's voice makes my skin crawl. I do not respond immediately. I let the silence hang, forcing her to fill the void. She exhales a perfectly rehearsed sigh of maternal sorrow. She tells me that she and Calvin have been doing so much soul-searching lately. She says life is simply too short to hold on to past misunderstandings. We miss our boys, Aisha, she says, her voice dripping with a venomous, fabricated sweetness. We want to put the past behind us. The past. She calls leaving my children homeless in the freezing rain the past. She calls funding the theft of my husband's legacy a simple misunderstanding. I grip the leather steering wheel of my car. In the passenger seat sits a briefcase holding a legally binding state contract that will make me one of the wealthiest women in Georgia. I am exactly 30 days away from publicly obliterating their entire social and financial standing. The timing of this phone call is absolutely not a coincidence. Todd is bleeding out. The municipal board just publicly humiliated him on local television. His investors are fleeing his sinking development company in droves. My family is scrambling to present a united, flawless front to the Atlanta elite to salvage whatever reputation they have left. A fractured family is a massive liability when you are begging banks for a bailout. I pitch my voice down. I let my shoulders slump forward against the driver's seat, forcing the confident tension out of my vocal cords. I make myself sound exactly like the woman they expect to hear. Tired, defeated, crushed by 5 years of rural poverty. "What do you want, Mother?" I ask, keeping my voice barely above a ragged whisper. Valerie eagerly takes the bait. She explains that she and Calvin are hosting a lavish, extravagant 40th vow renewal ceremony at the Atlanta Botanical Garden next month. She describes the imported orchids, the hired string quartet, and the guest list overflowing with local politicians and corporate titans. It is a desperate, transparent display of wealth, designed to prove to the city that the family empire is completely stable. She insists that I attend the ceremony. She insists that I bring Malik and Miles so they can be photographed with their loving, benevolent grandparents for the society pages. I tell her I do not belong at a high society event. I let a tremor enter my voice, telling her my clothes are old and I cannot afford the gas to drive into the city, let alone a hotel room. Valerie adopts a tone of gracious, suffocating pity. She tells me she heard terrible rumors from Chloe's friends. She says she heard I was living in a dilapidated trailer park, struggling to keep the electricity turned on. She offers me a lifeline. She wants Chloe to meet me for coffee tomorrow morning. She claims Chloe wants to clear the air between sisters and offer me some financial assistance to get back on my feet. Just enough cash to buy a respectable dress and put my boys in decent suits so we do not embarrass the family in the photographs. I agree. I thank her softly, playing the role of the broken, grateful daughter to absolute perfection. She hangs up the phone, sounding deeply satisfied. She genuinely believes she has successfully purchased my compliance. I sit in the concrete parking garage of the state capitol and let out a sharp, echoing laugh. They are attempting to buy me with pocket change while I hold the master deed to their entire future. I drive back to the valley. The sun is setting, casting long golden shadows across the pristine white fences of Jamal's Haven. Isaiah and Brenda are sitting on the wraparound porch of their cedar guest house. I pull up a rocking chair and tell them about the phone call. Brenda's eyes narrow with fierce, protective anger. She tells me not to go near them. She warns me that corporate snakes bite hardest when they are cornered. But Isaiah watches me closely. He sees the cold, strategic calculation in my eyes. He knows I am not walking into a trap. I am walking onto a stage, and I am the one writing the script. The next morning, I prepare my costume. I walk past the sharp-tailored charcoal suit hanging in my closet. I dig into the very back of my dresser drawers. I pull out a faded, oversized gray cardigan that has entirely lost its shape. I put on a pair of cheap, scuffed denim jeans and worn-out work boots that I usually reserve for mucking out the quarantine stalls. I wash my face and leave my skin completely bare. I apply a tiny amount of pale setting powder to make my complexion look exhausted and washed out. I pull my hair into a messy, uneven knot at the nape of my neck. I look exactly like a woman who has been thoroughly beaten by the world. I borrow Isaiah's oldest farm truck for the drive. It is a rusted 20-year-old pickup that rattles violently when it hits 50 miles per hour on the highway. I drive into the wealthy, manicured enclave of Buckhead. The transition from the rural foothills to the epicenter of Atlanta luxury is intentionally jarring. I pull the rusted, mud-splattered truck directly into the valet line of an ultra-exclusive European-style cafe. The valet attendant looks at my vehicle with poorly disguised disdain. I hand him the keys, keeping my head down, playing the part of the intimidated outsider perfectly. I push open the heavy glass doors of the cafe. The air smells of expensive espresso, roasted beans, and imported pastries. The patrons are dressed in high-end designer labels, conducting hushed business meetings over organic lattes and sparkling water. I scan the elegant room. In the very back, sitting in a plush velvet booth beneath a modern art installation, is my sister. Chloe is a vision of desperate, aggressive wealth. She is wearing a pristine white silk blouse and heavy layered gold jewelry. Her hair is perfectly styled into loose, expensive waves. But beneath the flawless designer makeup, I can see the tight, pinched lines of severe stress around her mouth and eyes. Todd's impending financial ruin is clearly taking a massive toll on her perfect suburban life. She is drinking her coffee with quick, jerky movements. I walk slowly across the polished hardwood floor, deliberately letting my shoulders slump forward, dragging my heavy boots slightly against the ground. Chloe spots me approaching. A fleeting look of absolute malicious triumph flashes across her face as she takes in my faded cardigan and my unstyled hair. She raises her manicured hand and gestures imperiously to the empty leather seat across from her. I approach the booth. Sitting squarely in the center of the marble table, right next to her untouched cappuccino, is a thick manila envelope. I slide into the booth opposite my sister. The leather seat squeaks loudly under my cheap faded denim, drawing the irritated glances of the businessmen at the adjacent table. Chloe recoils slightly, pulling her pristine white silk sleeve away from the center of the table, as if my poverty is a contagious disease. She does not stand to greet me. She does not offer the warm, familial embrace our mother promised on the phone. Her eyes rake over my unstyled hair, the dark circles I artificially enhanced with pale powder, and the frayed, pill-covered cuffs of my oversized cardigan. The triumphant smirk on her face is unmistakable. She is absolutely reveling in my fabricated misery. She does not ask about Malik and Miles. She does not ask how I have survived the last 5 grueling years, or how I have managed to build a sanctuary out of the dirt they left me in. Instead, she taps her perfectly manicured fingernails against the thick manila envelope resting beside her untouched foam-topped cappuccino. She pushes the heavy envelope across the cold marble surface toward me. Her voice is crisp, carrying the practiced, condescending authority of a woman who believes she holds all the power. She tells me that Mom and Dad are deeply concerned about my living situation. She says they know I have been struggling to keep my head above water, playing farm girl out in the middle of nowhere, while my children suffer the consequences of my stubborn pride. Then she leans forward, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. She tells me that Todd is willing to be incredibly generous. She says Todd somehow found out that I am the one squatting on that useless barren dirt out in the valley. My pulse thumps a steady, calculated beat in my throat. I keep my expression carefully arranged in a mask of exhausted defeat, but inside my mind is racing with razor-sharp clarity. Todd has finally pierced the corporate veil of Jamal's Haven LLC. He likely bribed a low-level county clerk or hired a ruthless private investigator to dig through the initial unsealed incorporation filings before Evelyn had fully fortified our anonymity shields. Todd knows I own the land. But Todd does not know about Apex Dynamics, because the $99 million state acquisition is legally locked behind a strict mandatory 30-day sunshine seal. Todd is operating completely in the dark. He is staring at a multi-million-dollar geothermal gold mine and sees only a desperate, uneducated beggar holding the deed. He actually thinks he can trick me. Chloe crosses her arms, looking at me with suffocating, venomous pity. She explains that Todd understands the therapeutic ranch is a failed, pathetic experiment. She tells me his development firm is willing to graciously bail me out of my massive financial hole. He is offering to buy the entire valley parcel for $50,000 in cash. She frames this insulting sum as an act of profound life-saving charity. She insists this money will pay off whatever predatory debts I have accumulated and finally allow me to move Malik and Miles out of that rural squalor and into a decent, respectable apartment in the suburbs. She speaks slowly, enunciating her words as if I am too dim-witted to grasp the magnitude of this alleged generosity. I stare at the envelope, letting my hands tremble just enough to sell the performance. Chloe Mice interprets my deliberate silence for awe. She opens the flap of the envelope and slides a crisp, legally binding document onto the table. It is a quitclaim deed. It is completely drafted, notarized on Todd's end, and ready for my signature. The dense legal text transfers all property lines, mineral access, and absolute water rights directly to Todd's holding company. She pulls a heavy silver pen from her designer handbag and places it precisely on top of the paper, pointing toward the signature line. Just sign this quitclaim deed. Chloe smirks, leaning back against the plush velvet booth. She delivers the ultimate ultimatum, wielding our family's conditional love like a blunt weapon. Sign the paper, take the $50,000, and I can attend Mom and Dad's lavish vow renewal ceremony. I will be welcomed back into the family fold, allowed to stand in the background of their perfect society photographs, proving to Atlanta's elite that the family is unified and strong. But if I refuse this generous lifeline, Chloe states flatly, her eyes turning cold and hard, I will remain cut off forever. They will permanently erase me from their lives, and Todd will resume his aggressive, heavily funded legal campaign. She promises me that Todd will bleed my anonymous LLC completely dry in court until the bank inevitably forecloses on the property anyway, leaving me with absolutely nothing. I look down at the quitclaim deed resting on the marble table. $50,000 for a property the state of Georgia, just valued at $99 million. The sheer unadulterated arrogance of their attempted theft is breathtaking. They are not just trying to steal my home and my sanctuary. They are actively trying to buy my dignity for pennies and demanding my absolute gratitude in return. I let out a shaky, pathetic breath, letting my shoulders collapse further inward. I reach into the pocket of my worn cardigan and pull out my cracked, outdated smartphone. I tell Chloe I need a second. I let my voice waver, telling her I need to check my bank balance to see if $50,000 will actually cover the outstanding feed bills for the rescue horses and the winter heating costs. I keep my head bowed, my fingers hovering over the cracked glass screen. I do not open my banking application. I navigate directly to the voice memo app. I subtly hit the bright red record button, ensuring the phone's microphone is angled perfectly toward my sister. The digital timer begins to tick upward, capturing the ambient noise of the upscale cafe and the sharp, impatient tapping of Chloe's manicured nails against the table. I lock the screen to keep the recording running silently in the background and place the phone face down right next to the quitclaim deed. I slowly look up at Chloe. I widen my eyes, forcing a sheen of desperate, naive tears to pool in my lower lashes. I play the part of the broken, terrified widow to absolute, undeniable perfection. Chloe throws her head back and laughs. It is a sharp, grating sound that cuts through the quiet, civilized hum of the upscale cafe. A wasteland, Aisha, she sneers, leaning closer to the hidden microphone on my phone. We are doing you a massive favor. You have no idea how the real world operates. She takes a sip of her water, leaving a smudge of expensive red lipstick on the rim of the glass. She is so confident in her superiority that she does not even try to filter her words. She freely admits that Todd's development firm is actively bleeding out. She complains bitterly that some faceless ghost corporation bought up all the river access and landlocked their entire project. She tells me Todd's investors are threatening mutiny and demanding a return on their capital. She looks at me with absolute contempt and explains that my useless dirt patch will appease those furious investors for exactly 1 week, buying Todd just enough time to restructure his massive debt. Take the $50,000, Chloe demands, tapping her manicured nails sharply against the marble table. Take it, buy your kids some decent shoes, and say thank you. Because if you do not, Todd has a team of lawyers who will simply seize the land through the courts, and you will walk away with absolutely nothing. We will bury you in legal fees until you are begging us to take it. I let a single tear spill over my lower lash line. I reach across the table with trembling fingers and pull the heavy quitclaim deed toward me. I do not touch the heavy silver pen she offered. Instead, I carefully fold the document in half and slide it into my worn tote bag, pressing it right up against the cracked smartphone that is still silently recording every single syllable of her extortion. I need to read it over, I whisper, keeping my eyes cast downward in a perfect display of submission. I will bring the signed deed to the vow renewal, I promise. Chloe smiles. It is a terrifying, victorious smirk that twists her beautiful features into something deeply ugly. She stands up, smoothing the wrinkles from her white silk blouse, leaving her $8 cappuccino completely untouched. She tells me to make sure I wash my hair before the ceremony so I do not embarrass Mom and Calvin in the family photos. She walks out of the cafe without a backward glance, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. The absolute second, the glass doors close behind her, my trembling hands instantly steady. I wipe the fake tear from my cheek with the back of my hand. I pick up my phone, stop the voice recording, and immediately upload the audio file directly to 3 separate heavily encrypted cloud servers. I stand up, walk out to Isaiah's rusted, mud-splattered truck, and drive straight into the heart of downtown Atlanta. Evelyn is waiting for me in her pristine glass corner office. I do not bother sitting down. I place my phone on the center of her glass desk and hit play. We stand in silence and listen to the crisp, high-definition audio of my sister proudly detailing her husband's financial desperation, his active deception of his private equity investors, and their blatant attempt to illegally coerce a property owner under false pretenses. Evelyn looks up at me, a slow, dangerous curve forming on her lips. She tells me this recording is the final nail in Todd's coffin. It is undeniable, legally actionable proof of predatory intent and bad faith. It completely neutralizes any future attempt Todd might make to claim he was operating within the bounds of standard municipal development. He handed us the rope and Chloe just tied the noose. With the trap perfectly set, I give Evelyn the final command. We officially clear the 30-day seal on the state contract. The municipal waiting period is over. My identity is unsealed, filed directly into the state registry and the public property records, waiting like a buried landmine for anyone who bothers to look. But more importantly, the bureaucratic hold is lifted. The funds are cleared for release. I stand behind Evelyn's desk and watch her computer monitor. I watch as the state treasury formally processes the wire transfer. The screen refreshes. The account balance for Jamal's Haven LLC updates in real time. $99 million. The numbers stretch across the screen, a massive wall of digits that represents absolute impenetrable security. I stare at the screen until my vision blurs. That number means Isaiah will never have to worry about a commercial mortgage again. It means Brenda can hire a dozen specialized trauma counselors and build the indoor riding arena she has always dreamed of. It means Malik and Miles will have ironclad trust funds that guarantee they will never experience the poverty my family forced upon us. It means I am entirely untouchable. The day of Valerie and Calvin's lavish 40th vow renewal arrives with a suffocating, humid Georgia heat. I do not pull out the faded gray cardigan. I do not leave my face bare and exhausted. I spend the entire morning in a luxury hotel suite preparing for war. I hire a private high-end styling team. They pull my hair back into a sleek, razor-sharp updo that pulls the skin of my cheekbones taut, leaving no room for softness. I slip into a custom midnight blue designer gown that I purchased directly from a private showroom the day before. It is made of heavy, structured silk that drapes over my frame like liquid armor, catching the light with every subtle movement. I pair the gown with simple, devastatingly expensive diamond drop earrings and a pair of stilettos that raise me 2 inches above my natural height. I look nothing like the broken, defeated farm girl they expect to shuffle through the back door. I look like a woman who could buy and sell their entire pathetic lives before breakfast. I step out of the hotel lobby and into the waiting, blacked-out Maybach I chartered for the evening. The chauffeur holds the door, his expression perfectly neutral as I slide into the plush leather interior. We drive through the sprawling wrought iron gates of the Atlanta Botanical Garden. The venue is entirely closed off to the public, overflowing with aggressive security guards, scurrying event planners, and the absolute elite of Georgia's political and corporate spheres. I watch through the tinted glass as flashing cameras from local society photographers illuminate the grand entrance. My family wants a spectacle. They want a massive public display of unity and wealth to save their sinking ship from Todd's collapsing empire. They invited the forgotten, discarded daughter to play the role of the grateful peasant begging for scraps at their feast. The Maybach glides to a smooth stop right at the front of the valet line, bypassing a row of luxury sedans. The chauffeur steps out and opens my door. I step out into the warm evening air, the midnight blue silk trailing behind me, my spine perfectly straight. It is time to crash a party. The heavy glass doors of the Atlanta Botanical Garden ballroom swing open. The scent of thousands of imported white orchids immediately assaults my senses, thick and cloying in the humid Georgia night. I step over the threshold, my stilettos sinking silently into the plush, custom-laid carpet. The massive conservatory has been transformed into a grotesque monument to manufactured wealth. Society photographers snap rapid-fire shots of local politicians, private equity barons and socialites, dressed in shimmering couture. I do not flinch from the flashes. I glide forward, the midnight blue silk of my custom gown parting the sea of guests like a polished blade. I barely make it 10 paces into the room before they spot me. Valerie and Calvin detach themselves from a group of state senators, the artificial smiles draining instantly from their faces. They practically sprint across the ballroom floor to intercept me, terrified that I might actually speak to someone of importance. They flank me seamlessly, forming a physical barricade between me and the rest of the elite crowd. Valerie's eyes dart frantically over my designer gown, the flawless, severe styling of my hair, and the devastatingly expensive diamond drops at my ears. Her perfectly lifted brow furrows in deep, panicked confusion. This does not compute with the lie she has been telling. This is not the broken, destitute woman she expected to shuffle through the service entrance. "Where did you rent that?" Valerie hisses, her voice a toxic, vibrating thread. Calvin steps closer, his broad shoulders shifting to block me entirely from the view of a passing photographer. His face is flushed with a dark, furious red. "Are you here to cause a scene, or did you bring the signed deed?" Calvin demands in a harsh, guttural whisper. He looks at me with absolute contempt, fully believing I am still the frightened girl he threw away 5 years ago. He genuinely thinks the financial leash is still firmly around my neck. I do not shrink back. I hold his gaze with dead, terrifying calm. I raise my hand and slowly tap my fingers against the gold clasp of my designer clutch. "I brought exactly what Todd deserves," I say, my voice steady and cold. Calvin's jaw twitches. He interprets my words as total submission, assuming the $50,000 quitclaim deed is tucked safely inside my bag. Satisfied but thoroughly disgusted by my presence and my refusal to look defeated, he grips my elbow with punishing force. "You are going to sit exactly where we tell you," he growls. They march me away from the sparkling center of the room, away from the crystal chandeliers, the cascading floral arrangements, and the soft melodies of the string quartet. They guide me to the absolute furthest, darkest corner of the ballroom. It is a cramped, wobbly table shoved directly next to the swinging metal doors of the catering kitchen. The table is so small it barely accommodates a single place setting. The constant aggressive clatter of industrial dishwashers and the sharp shouting of the waitstaff completely drown out the elegant music. Every time a waiter rushes past, the heavy metal door bangs against the back of my wooden chair. They place me here to hide me, to ensure that not a single one of their wealthy friends has to look at the family failure. I sit down on the uncomfortable chair. I do not complain. I do not cause the scene they are so desperately anticipating. I simply cross my legs, signal a passing bewildered waiter for a glass of sparkling water, and watch. I have the absolute best seat in the house to watch the Titanic sink. The display of wealth in the main room is genuinely nauseating. Massive hand-carved ice sculptures of swans are slowly sweating into silver basins under the warm lighting. A 10-tier cake decorated with edible gold leaf towers over the dessert station, an absurd, towering monument to excess. The entire evening is a frantic, expensive illusion designed to convince the room that the family empire is secure and their financial standing is untouchable. The speeches begin. I watch Valerie and Calvin take the microphone, holding hands and beaming for the cameras. They deliver long, forced monologues about the enduring power of family unity, about overcoming adversity together, and about the unbreakable bonds of blood. The hypocrisy is so thick it practically coats the back of my throat. They smile warmly at Chloe, who sits in the front row wearing a smug, triumphant grin. She catches my eye across the massive room and raises her champagne glass in a mocking toast, entirely convinced she single-handedly saved her husband from financial ruin this morning at the cafe. Then the string quartet fades out. The ballroom lights dim, focusing a bright singular spotlight on the center stage. Todd steps up to the microphone. He looks noticeably better than he did on the news broadcast. The frantic, wide-eyed panic has been replaced by the arrogant swagger of a man who believes he has just secured the ultimate victory. He has clearly mistaken Chloe's report of our coffee meeting as a total unqualified success. He smooths the lapels of his tuxedo, projecting an aura of absolute invincibility. He raises his crystal champagne flute, his eyes locking onto a specific table in the front row where his furious, restless private equity investors are seated. He flashes them a broad, predatory smile. He commands the attention of the entire room, his voice echoing through the massive speakers thick with unearned confidence. He loudly and arrogantly toasts to the future, bragging to the investors and the gathered politicians about his upcoming massive real estate acquisition. He promises the crowd that this specific highly negotiated land deal will permanently secure his firm's dominance in the green tech sector, silencing the doubters and cementing their legacy in the state of Georgia forever. The applause following Todd's speech is a fractured, discordant sound. The society sycophants and paid politicians clap with polite enthusiasm, but the front row remains chillingly subdued. Todd's private equity investors offer only stiff, obligatory nods. They are sharp, calculating predators, and they can smell the desperation rolling off his tailored tuxedo. Todd steps back from the microphone, his chest puffed out in a manufactured display of absolute victory, completely unaware that he is standing on a trapdoor. From my hidden vantage point, by the swinging metal kitchen doors, I watch my sister make her move, the turning point. Chloe detaches herself from the VIP table at the front of the ballroom. She weaves through the sea of designer gowns and crystal centerpieces, moving with the aggressive, entitled strut of a woman who believes she owns the very air she breathes. The warm, ambient light catches the heavy gold jewelry layered over her white silk blouse. As she nears the shadows of the back wall, her flawless society smile instantly vanishes, replaced by a mask of cold, impatient irritation. She stops in front of my cramped, wobbly table. She does not bother to greet me. She does not offer a single word of pleasantry. She simply thrusts her manicured hand across the table, her palm facing upward, and snaps her fingers twice. The sound is sharp and commanding, exactly the way one might summon a disobedient dog. "Hand over the deed," Aisha Chloe demands. Her voice is a harsh, grating whisper designed to cut through the clatter of the nearby kitchen. "We gave you your seat at the table. We let you into the room. Now it is time to pay your dues to the real family so Todd can calm his investors." She glares down at me, her eyes entirely devoid of empathy. She genuinely believes I am sitting here trembling, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of their wealth, ready to hand over my entire future for a $50,000 scrap of charity. She waits for me to reach into my bag. She waits for me to surrender. The action. I do not reach for my bag. I do not lower my eyes. I place my glass of sparkling water squarely on the table. I stand up. As I rise from the shadows, the dim lighting finally catches the heavy structured silk of my midnight blue designer gown. The fabric ripples around my frame like liquid armor. The devastatingly expensive diamond drops at my ears catch the flash of a distant camera. Chloe takes a sudden involuntary half-step backward. Her eyes widen, tracking the sharp, flawless styling of my hair and the undeniable radiating authority in my posture. For the first time in 5 years, the absolute certainty on her face begins to crack. I do not speak to her. I bypass her entirely. I step away from the kitchen doors and walk directly into the center aisle of the ballroom. My stilettos click with a slow, rhythmic, and deadly precision against the polished marble floor. The sea of wealthy guests naturally parts before me. Conversations abruptly halt. Heads turn. The sheer confidence of my stride draws the attention of the entire room, pulling the spotlight away from the glittering ice sculptures and directly onto me. Calvin spots me from the secondary VIP table. His face flushes a dangerous, violent crimson. He pushes his chair back so violently it nearly tips over. He steps directly into the center aisle, planting his broad shoulders to form a physical barricade between me and the stage. "What do you think you are doing?" Calvin hisses, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Get back to your table right now." I do not stop walking. I do not break my stride. I look him dead in the eyes, my expression an impenetrable mask of absolute frost. He sees the ruthless, terrifying calculation in my gaze. He sees the woman who survived the mud he left her in. At the very last second, his courage breaks. Calvin actually steps aside. I glide past my father and smoothly ascend the velvet-lined stairs to the main stage. Todd is still standing a few feet away, holding a crystal champagne flute, his arrogant smile freezing into a look of absolute uncomprehending shock. I walk straight up to the center podium. I reach out and grab the microphone directly from the brass stand. The sudden aggressive movement causes a sharp, echoing screech of audio feedback to blast through the massive overhead speakers. The hired string quartet abruptly stops playing. The bows freeze against the cellos. The low murmur of 100 hushed conversations dies instantly. Total suffocating silence descends upon the Atlanta Botanical Garden ballroom. Every single camera, every single investor, and every single member of my family is staring directly at me, the confrontation. I grip the cold metal of the microphone. I look down at the front row, locking eyes directly with the lead private equity investor who controls Todd's financial lifeline. I bypass my family entirely. I speak directly to the people who hold the power. My sister Chloe wants the deed to my ranch, I announce. My voice is calm, resonant, and completely devoid of fear. It echoes off the vaulted glass ceilings and the imported crystal chandeliers. I watch Valerie press a trembling hand to her mouth. I watch Calvin grip the back of a chair until his knuckles turn stark white. Todd told everyone here tonight that his firm is on the verge of a massive, game-changing real estate acquisition. I continue my tone perfectly, even and conversational. He told you that this acquisition will permanently secure his company's future and guarantee your returns. What he failed to mention is that the land he is referring to belongs to me. He also failed to mention his exact appraisal of the property. Just yesterday, Todd and Chloe informed me that my land is a barren wasteland worth exactly $50,000. A collective quiet murmur ripples through the front row of investors. They are sharks, and they instantly smell the blood in the water. They shift in their seats, their eyes darting from me to Todd. Todd steps forward, his face pale and slick with sudden sweat. He reaches a hand out toward me, his voice a panicked, desperate whisper meant only for my ears. "Aisha, shut your mouth. Turn off the microphone right now. You are ruining everything." I do not even look at him. I keep my eyes locked on the men in the front row. The hook. I pull my cracked, outdated smartphone from my designer clutch. I pick up the auxiliary display cord resting on the podium, the exact cord Todd just used to display his fraudulent architectural renderings, and I plug it directly into my device. Unfortunately, I cannot sell this barren wasteland to Todd to save his bankrupt company, I say, my voice ringing out with crystal clarity, because I finalized the sale with the state yesterday. I tap the screen of my phone. The massive 30-foot projector screens, mounted directly behind the stage, flash, blindingly bright white. The ambient lighting of the ballroom is completely overwhelmed by the harsh digital glare. The screen syncs perfectly to my display. There are no architectural renderings. There are no corporate logos. There is only a direct high-definition mirror of my verified encrypted banking application. The certified state treasury wire transfer is displayed in massive, undeniable black text for the entire elite society of Atlanta to read. USD 99,000. The absolute silence in the room shatters. A collective echoing gasp rips through the ballroom. The society photographers instantly begin firing their cameras, the rapid flashes exploding like a strobe light across the stage. The lead investor in the front row stands up abruptly, his chair screeching against the marble, his eyes locked onto the nine-figure sum glaring from the projector screen. Todd drops his crystal champagne flute. It hits the stage and shatters into 100 glittering pieces, completely drowned out by the sudden deafening roar of a room that has just witnessed the total public annihilation of an empire. The ballroom erupts into absolute chaos. The collective gasp of 200 people swells into a frantic, deafening roar. Todd stands completely paralyzed at the center of the stage. He looks down at the shattered remains of his crystal champagne flute, then back up at the blinding white projector screen. His jaw hangs slack. The arrogant, untouchable swagger from seconds ago vanishes, replaced by the hollow, hollowed-out look of a man watching his entire life evaporate. Down in the front row, Valerie stumbles backward. She clutches the heavy string of pearls at her throat, her face draining of all color until her skin matches the pristine white orchids decorating the tables. Beside her, Calvin's knees seem to give out. He braces himself against the edge of the stage, his hands shaking violently as he stares up at the nine-figure sum projected above us. He reaches out, grabbing the microphone stand to steady his trembling frame. 99 million. Calvin stammers into the microphone, his voice a breathless, reedy wheeze that broadcasts over the venue speakers. $99 million. The sheer, staggering amount breaks the spell, holding my sister captive. Chloe pushes her way through the stunned crowd, her heels slipping on the marble floor in her desperate haste. Her eyes are perfectly round, blown wide with a sudden, unadulterated greed that is entirely repulsive to witness. She practically scrambles up the velvet-lined stairs of the stage, her arms outstretched, reaching for me, as if she can physically grasp the money. Aisha, Chloe gasps, her chest heaving as she stops inches away from me. Aisha, that is family money. We are your family. We took you in. You have to share that. Todd needs that capital right now to save the company. We can pool our resources. We can be partners. I look at her desperate, grasping hands. I look at the frantic calculation in her eyes, watching her brain frantically try to pivot from extortion to partnership in the span of 30 seconds. I let a slow, freezing smile spread across my face. Family. I say, my voice steady and amplified perfectly by the microphone still gripped in my hand. Let us talk about family. I do not break eye contact with Chloe. I simply reach down and tap the screen of my synced smartphone. The projector screen behind me flickers, but the real devastation comes through the venue's massive state-of-the-art surround sound system. The crisp, high-definition audio recording from the cafe fills every single corner of the botanical garden. My sister's sneering, arrogant voice booms through the speakers. It is a wasteland, Aisha. We are doing you a massive favor. Todd's company is bleeding out because some ghost corporation bought the water rights, but your dirt patch will appease his investors for a week. Take the $50K before we just seize it through the courts. The recording is devastatingly clear. Every drop of cruelty, every ounce of manipulation, and every single detail of Todd's massive financial deception is broadcast directly to the very people he is trying to con. The reaction from this front row is instantaneous. The private equity investors do not gasp. They do not murmur. They operate with ruthless clinical precision. The lead investor, a silver-haired man who controls the primary capital backing. Todd's firm stands up so forcefully, his heavy wooden chair crashes backward onto the floor. He pulls his phone from his tuxedo jacket, barking sharp, immediate orders to his legal team. The other investors follow suit in a synchronized wave of corporate execution. They are actively freezing accounts and drafting lawsuits right there on the ballroom floor. Todd watches them, his chest heaving with panicked, shallow breaths. He reaches out toward the lead investor, begging for a moment to explain, but the men simply turn their backs on him. Todd's career, his firm, and his entire social standing are instantly, publicly, and permanently destroyed. Valerie suddenly abandons Calvin at the edge of the stage. She pushes her way up the stairs, forcing tears to stream down her face, her hands clasped together in a desperate display of maternal devotion. She tries to wrap her arms around my silk-covered shoulders, weeping loudly for the benefit of the remaining society photographers. My beautiful daughter Valerie cries, her voice trembling with fabricated emotion. We only wanted the best for you. We pushed you. We had to push you so you would find your strength and succeed. We knew you could do it. I take a sharp step backward, refusing to let her touch me. My gaze hardens into something she has never seen from me before. Absolute, unwavering authority. You did not push me, I reply, my voice carrying clearly through the room, cutting through her manufactured sobs. You abandoned my grieving children at their father's funeral. You left us to freeze in the mud so you could protect your perfect society image. You are not my family. I turn my back on her. I look straight down the center aisle of the ballroom past the frozen guests and the shattered ice sculptures directly toward the heavy wooden doors at the back of the venue. I raise my chin. The grand doors swing open. The humid night air rushes into the stale, over-conditioned room. Standing in the threshold, illuminated by the soft golden lights of the garden paths, are Isaiah and Brenda. They are dressed impeccably, standing tall and proud, holding the hands of my 12-year-old twins. Malik and Miles look incredibly sharp in perfectly tailored suits, their heads held high, their eyes searching the room until they find me on the stage. They look radiant. They look like boys who know they are profoundly, unconditionally loved. I drop the microphone onto the podium. I do not spare a single backward glance for the people weeping and shouting on the stage behind me. I walk down the velvet stairs and glide down the center aisle. The crowd parts for me again, but this time, the silence is filled with a different kind of awe. I reach the back of the room. Malik and Miles launch themselves forward, wrapping their arms tightly around my waist. I hold my sons close, breathing in the scent of cedar and clean cotton. I look up at Isaiah and Brenda. Brenda's eyes are shining with fierce protective pride. Isaiah gives me a slow, deep nod of respect. I reach into my designer tote bag and pull out a thick, heavy leather binder. I hand it directly to Isaiah. 5 years ago, you gave me your last dime. I tell them, my voice dropping to a soft, genuine register meant only for them. You took in a broken widow and her 2 terrified boys, and you built a fortress around us. You sacrificed your own security to keep us safe. Today, I am returning the favor. Isaiah looks down at the binder. Brenda places a trembling hand over her mouth. Inside that leather casing are the fully paid, unencumbered deeds to a sprawling state-of-the-art, luxury equestrian estate in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Next to the deeds are the bank certifications for 2 irrevocable trust funds, each holding $10 million, permanently securing their retirement and the future of their rescue operations. Brenda lets out a sound that is half sob, half laugh. She pulls me into a crushing embrace, her strong arms wrapping around me and the boys. Isaiah places a heavy, calloused hand on my shoulder, his eyes communicating a gratitude that goes deeper than words. I gently step out of Brenda's embrace. I turn around for one final look at the ballroom. The scene is a masterpiece of ruin. Todd is on his knees at the edge of the stage, his head in his hands as the investors storm out of the building. Calvin is shouting at a group of reporters, frantically trying to block their camera lenses. Chloe is frozen exactly where I left her, staring blankly at the massive numbers still glowing on the projector screen, realizing that her entire life of privilege has just evaporated. Valerie is sitting on the stairs, weeping alone in her ruined couture. This is what real family looks like, I say, my voice carrying back into the room, calm and absolute. You worshipped money and you lost your daughter. Todd worshipped greed and he lost everything. I turn back to the open doors. I take Malik's hand in my left and Miles's hand in my right. Isaiah and Brenda walk beside us, a united, unbreakable front. We step out of the stifling ballroom and into the warm, fresh air of the Atlanta night. We walk down the paved garden path toward the waiting chauffeured Maybach. The driver holds the door open, offering a polite, knowing smile. We climb into the quiet luxury of the car. The heavy doors pull shut with a solid, satisfying thud, sealing us inside our own sanctuary and leaving their shattered, toxic empire completely in ruins behind us. The lesson learned. The ultimate lesson from this story is that true worth is never defined by those who seek to diminish you. Family should be a source of unconditional support, not a breeding ground for manipulation, greed, and toxic comparison. When you are constantly underestimated and treated as a scapegoat, the most powerful response is not to argue, but to quietly build your own strength and independence. True validation comes from within, and success achieved on your own terms is the ultimate shield against betrayal. Walking away from toxic environments allows you to reclaim your dignity, discover your true potential, and surround yourself with people who genuinely respect you. Call to action. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic people to find your own success, and how did it change your life? Tell us your story in the comments below.